Hello and welcome back to Phil's Drone Zone, and welcome to part 13 of Learning Piece by Piece, the complete beginner's guide to working in Motion 5. If you are a first-time visitor here, then don't forget to hit that subscribe button and click that bell so you can be updated when future videos in the series are uploaded. Also, if you are brand new to Motion, I recommend that you go back to earlier episodes so that you can catch up to where we're at now. Okay, so today we're going to be starting looking at the behaviors. We're doing a lot of keyframing, but now we're going to look at how behaviors can save you a great deal of time in certain circumstances. And we're going to start today with the basic motion behaviors. So let's jump straight in and see what we can do. Now I've got a standard project 1920 by 1080 and it is 30 frames per second and 5 seconds long. Okay, so let's jump straight into the library. We'll go to Shapes, Arrow, and we'll drop that into our group. Go to Inspector and we will rotate -90 so that it's pointing to the right, and we'll drag it off towards the left-hand side of the screen. Then we'll change the color. We're going to make it a nice green so that we can see it. And now, normally when I want to move that, I will just keyframe it. It's easier, but there is another way. So let's go to Behaviors, and we will click on Basic Motion Move. And you'll see that we can move this around by dragging these little handles around. And if we position it there, you'll see then that the arrow moves towards that target that we've placed at the other side of our canvas. Okay, so let's delete that. I would normally keyframe that. It's much easier and I get much more control. So let's center this arrow up, and let's go back to Behaviors, Basic Motion, and this time we will select Fade In, Fade Out. You can change the fade in time. Let's make that 60 frames, and the fade out time, let's make that 62. And also, if you don't want it to fade out, then just make it 0. And then you get that fade in and fade out over the course of the project. So these are things that I would not really use. It'd be much easier and I'd get much more control with a couple of keyframes. Let's try another one. Let's go to Spin. And again, this is just basic rotation, which is very easy to keyframe. And we can change the parameters here in the behavior box and create spins, which are just easy enough and probably quicker to achieve using a couple of very simple keyframes. So there are many, many things in the behaviors that I simply wouldn't use. We can change the direction of the spin by adding a minus value. Let's delete that and let's have a look at some of the behaviors that I would use in the basic motion category. So I would definitely use the motion path. I'd use point at and snap alignment to motion, and I will definitely use from time to time the align to tool. And those are the 4 that I will actually use from that basic motion category. The rest I will just keyframe. So let's have a look at those 4. So let's just move my arrow back to the left-hand side, and now we will add a motion path. And you can see the motion path added, and it gives you that standard motion path that you can see there from left to right. Good thing is I can now add points. Hover over the line, right click, and add a point. And now I can move that point around, and I can play with it and alter its shape with the handles, and create all sorts of weird and wonderful patterns along which my object will move. And so now you'll see that my object is moving along that motion path. So it doesn't look great at the moment, and the reason for that is that it's pointing in the wrong direction. Easy to fix. We'll go to Snap Alignment to Motion. Now, I need to change that to vertical to make it align. It's the vertical axis. And now when it moves, it will be pointing in exactly the right direction all of the time that it's moving. So that's easy to fix. So those two are very, very valuable tools when you're creating projects. I can also change to linear by right-clicking on the point, right-click, and I could also delete the point. But I don't want to do that. Command Z to undo that. I just want to leave it pretty much as it is. So let's add a couple of points. So we'll make the shape a little bit more complex, and we'll move that up there. We'll adjust the shape, adjust the handle so we get a smoother sort of look to it. And let's add another point here, and then we'll bring this one down. I don't know, something like this. We'll just make this a little bit more smoother. Yeah, okay, that'll do. We've got a nice little motion path going on there. Now I'm going to disable the snap alignment to motion. I'm going to draw a little rectangle up in the corner there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Behaviours, Basic Motion. I'm going to choose Point At. Now I want the arrow to point at the rectangle. So we'll insert the rectangle into the well, and now it will point at the rectangle as it's moving. But it's taking a little bit of time, and that's a function of this transition value, and we need to reduce that down to 0, and you can see that it's already now pointing at it. And as we move it, then it's always going to be pointing at the rectangle in the corner. Again, this could turn out to be a very, very useful tool in some of the projects that you create later on. And finally, what we want to do is we'll go to this group and we'll create a circle. We'll make a circle. And we'll just draw in a simple circle. Something like that. And then we will position it. We'll go to shape. And we'll change the color. We'll grab our dropper, hit that green, and it'll change the color to the original green we used. Then we'll go to Properties, and we'll add Behavior Align To. Now, we need it to align to something. So we want the circle to align to the arrow. So we're going to move the arrow into the well. And now things have gone a little bit crazy because the circle and the arrow are both together. So we can just use this offset on Y just to drag the circle off to where we actually want it to align to. So now when we play that, what we've got is actually the circle and the arrow moving around. The arrow still pointing at the rectangle, but the circle remains aligned throughout the course of the project. And so again, those are the 4 tools that I would actually use. And those are the 4 that can save you a lot of time. To keyframe that would take a great deal of time. Some applications, well, this police car chase I did. I've just got a background of a road there, and then I'll make a new group and import the yellow car. Go to the inspector, and we'll scale that down a little bit so that we can see what's going on. And then we need to rotate it, and then we will position it. So I'll reduce the scale, and we'll zoom out so that we can position it. I'll reduce the scale of the car to 4, well, maybe 5, or maybe 3. So then when we zoom back in, we can see that we've got the car. It fits nicely on the road. We'll rotate it so that it fits nicely on the road and position it so that it's sitting there very nicely. There you go. So now that we've got it in position, we'll go back to fit. And now we need to add our motion path to the car. So behaviors, motion path. And once again, we get our standard, and we need to move that final point to where we want the car to finish up. So we'll just move it up here, maybe a bit higher along the road. I don't know, somewhere around there. And we now need to work with the motion path to make it fit the curvature of the road. So we'll just add a point there to begin with, and we'll drag that over. And now what you have to do is add points, play with the handles. We need to add a point here, I think. Yeah, somewhere around there. And you just need to play with it until you get the effect that you want. This point, there's a little problem with this point, so we need to just straighten that up. That's much better. And then, yeah, the rest of it looks fine. And then when we play that back, we need the car to move along the curve, which it's doing very nicely. It's working its way along that curve very nicely. Okay, so it's a little bit slow, so we'll find 4 seconds and we'll hit O on the keyboard so that we shorten the time that it takes to go that distance. Now we're going to add snap alignment to motion. We'll just zoom in to see what's happened. And what you can see is that the car has somehow become reversed. Well, that's okay. We'll just click this little box in invert axis, and now it's back to how it should be. Okay, so when we play that back, what we've got is the car beautifully moving around that bend. To add the police car, what we did is exactly the same. We imported the car, did all the rotation and lining it up. We positioned it slightly behind the original car, and we did exactly the same. We made a motion path for it, and we did pretty much snapped alignment, and we did exactly the same thing. We had to invert the axis again. To both of them, we added a Gaussian blur, just a very tiny amount, just to take the harshness off them. And that's really how we did that. And so to keyframe that kind of animation, we'd have had to do that frame by frame, changing position and rotation, and that would have taken an awful lot of time. The behaviors have saved all that time and effort for me. And that's it for this video. If you enjoyed the video, please give us a big thumbs up, and don't forget, if you're new, hit that subscribe button and click that bell. And all that remains to be said now is we will see you in part 14.